Hi there, I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air Magazine. Some days we offer you samples of some of the newest art instruction videos that we've produced. Today is no exception. This one's called Intuitive Figure Painting, and it's from Garin Baker, who is an instructor at the Art Students League. I think you'll enjoy this one.
Well, my name is Garin Baker, and we're in my studio in New Windsor, New York. And we have stunning Ivana is going to pose, and we're going to work with Ivana for like 3 or 4 days. We're going to start off with some drawings, just in charcoal. Might keep some, probably throw away most of them. We're going to find some good poses, maybe do some longer poses, and then we're going to grow into maybe doing a painting. And maybe outdoors, maybe inside, depending on the weather. We're just going to kind of let it flow, and we're going to try to have fun with it, and then we're going to stumble upon something that we're kind of calling discovering the moments. So I'm going to get started. Today, I'm just going to work on some newsprint paper with some vine charcoal. And before I start, I'm going to set up my palette. Usually my palette is a beautiful wood surface that I like to work on, and over the years I've built up this shelf of dry paint along the edge, and what that does is it allows me to keep wet paint here for a longer period of time. Since oil paint dries in 2 ways, oxidation and absorption, by building up this dry paint barrier here over the years, I've kind of cut down on 50% of the reason why your oil paint dries so quickly, or relatively quickly. So I'm going to jump right in, just start from my lightest to my darkest. I'm going to start with white, titanium white that is. You know, that's like John Singer Sargent said, don't spare the paint, put a lot out. Then a nice little warmer white called ivory white. Then a Naples yellow deep. Pretty straightforward palette, you know, sort of the chromatic sort of color wheel from lightest to darkest, your warms, 2 neutrals, cools, and you'll notice every color goes light, medium, dark, and so forth down the line. This is cad yellow. There's cad orange. This might be a little darker one, but that's all right. Cadmium red. This is a color I like. It's called permanent red violet. And what that does for me anyway is, especially like during nocturnes, especially I do a lot of New York City nocturnes out in the middle of the street. And sometimes when you get that real vibrant red and you don't want it to be sort of fire engine red, you want it to be kind of neon red, that's a great color for that. And it helps out for that. Now I have alizarin crimson. Burnt umber, burnt sienna. Again, don't spare the paint. Put it out. You should be using it up. This is a great color, the cinnabar green. This is a bit lighter one I have. So we'll try this one today. And then a straight cad green or permanent green, viridian green, and you can notice it's light, medium, dark, anywhere along the palette. And the whole spectrum basically goes these warms. It's basically the rainbow, and it's really trying to understand light more than it is a particular color. You notice my paints, the colors that I choose, are right off the primary color wheel. That's a Viridian. This is Cerulean Blue. This one has gotten pretty pricey over the years. Cobalt Blue. I guess they're running out of cobalt somewhere. I don't know. But it's getting up there, this tube of paint. And ultramarine. Oh, there it is. And an ivory black, or a Payne's gray, or lamp black. This one happens to be. This is ivory black. I'm not all that particular. I don't use very much black on my, in my painting, but from time to time, it's a helpful color. So when we get to in front of Ivana, when we're going to do a head study today, I'll talk a little bit about scale, temperature, how to mix lights and shadows in regards to cools and warms. And that's really what natural light or sunlight or daylight, even studio light like we're using, that's what this palette really affords you, is the ability to see those rich, rich lights, either those cool shadows, warm lights, or vice versa. Like when we go out tomorrow, because I think we're going to paint outdoors tomorrow, and you'll have cool lights and maybe warm shadows. So all of these variations with this palette, very straightforward, light to dark, warms, neutrals, and cools. A very simple, very basic palette that will afford you the ability to find those and discover those nice transitions temperature-wise and value-wise. Cool? All right, let's get to it. Can you remember this pose, what you're doing right now? Where your hands are and...
Yeah.
Okay. Can we go back to the other one just for a second? Yeah. And then, yeah, the knee like that. Yeah, there we go. That's it. Oh, man. So I'm set up for this format because it's really great. But when you sort of took a break and were relaxing, that was better.
Oh, you like that one better?
Could you go back to the other? I mean, now we're setting it up. It's not just during a break. That how you were doing, yeah. Yeah, just, I think you're this way a little bit more. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. Maybe we do 2 paintings today. I know, but they're, hands and lots of stuff going on. But this is, it's stunning. It's stunning. Now, how comfortable are you holding that 15, 20 minutes at a time versus the other one?
Either one for me.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, you ready to do it on camera?
Yeah, I'm ready to change it up on you.
Are you for real?
Yeah.
What are you changing?
Are you rolling?
Yeah. What are you changing?
Well, so I'm going to change my, I'm going to flip my canvas.
All right.
And she's going to be just as she is, because it's perfect. Does that require you moving your stuff?
Probably. Will you just, so just go ahead and do it, and then I can adjust.
Hey, that's what we're doing. We're
So where you?
We're discovering moments. We're discovering moments, man. So when you can't find the right pose, the best thing to do is to stop posing and to just go get lunch and to relax and to, if you've met the person for the first time, I know sometimes there are time constraints, but sometimes it's best to just pull back, because usually the reason you can't find the right pose is because you're pushing too hard. You know, you're asking them to pose. They're stiffening up. You have to simplify things. You got to get back to a simple interaction, you know, simple introduction. Relax, say hi, say your name, sit down, and wait for them to find their own groove. Because if you're patient enough, they're going to find their own body language. They're going to be comfortable enough to sit back and show you in an honest way who they are through their body, through their language, through the way they move and the way they sit. And if you're patient enough, you'll find it. You'll know it, and you'll know it when you see it. You know, once you get the right tilt and the right height, I think everything else you know.
Yeah, it'll fall into place.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, when it hurts, the pose is right.
Yeah.
Yeah. When it hurts. I know people that don't pose. That's why, you know, a lot of, I think I said yesterday, but a lot of times you try to adjust because it's painful. And that's when it affects, or, you know, not drastically, but if the artist, who's ever painting you is not aware of it, they'll just react to it, and that's why their paintings are off.
Yeah.
Is because you've adjusted, and they're trying to chase it rather than go with that initial structure. You know.
I've seen that.
Okay. All right. You're good. Cool. All right. Cool. So let's let Ivana get up, walk around, and then we'll fall back into it. And while she's doing that, I'm going to tone my canvas. Okay? Awesome. See, that was a perfect example of setting up a pose, taking a break, and then discovering the right pose. It happens all the time where you set up something that you think is awesome, and it most of the time is, or some of the time is, and you'll start working, and the model will take a break and fall into something very authentic, very natural, very much her own body language or his own body language. And lo and behold, you have found a much more compelling portrait, much more compelling figure study. And that in a nutshell right there is what this kind of thing is all about, is finding that real truth, the beauty in that simple truth. And you can't pose that. You can't set that up. You can't script it. Either it happens or it doesn't. So I'm just trying to get rid of the overwhelming, glaring white of the canvas, because in some artists tone canvas, some artists just work on white. There's no rule of, you know, this is how you should do it. It's a different preference. And I like to lay some interesting washes, you know, some abstraction down, because I like to approach it in an abstract way. So I'm just grabbing colors, blacks, blues, reds, purples, just letting it wash into each other. The randomness of, you know, nature, how nature grows, trees grow, and people grow is random. There's a miracle in that chaotic order of things. And out of this, all these beautiful things are going to happen. The things you can't plan. You can't script it. It drips. This beautiful turn when Ivana starts posing again. You're going to see it. It's beautiful gesture in there. Just trying to knock down the richness of that purple a little bit by mixing in a complementary, which would be the opposite on the color wheel. We'll get into all of that. Some very important things about color wheel and opposites and complementary colors. Okay. This is going to take like 5 or 10 minutes so it's not so slippery wet. And then once it sets up, we're going to jump right into that pose again. Okay? I'm really, excited about the fact that we stumbled upon that. That was what kind of the things, and I hadn't anticipated it for, like what do we call a simple head study. This is going to be a little bit more than a simple head study. Mm-hmm. Voila, right? But we'll see, Cool. We'll see how it, develops. But so I was thinking of maybe 3 hours, but we might, we'll take a lunch break and. Okay, all right. So let's see you kind of fall back into it. Just chin down just a bit. There it is. Bingo. Bingo, bango. Awesome. Okay. So did we decide 10 or 20?
We'll do 20.
All right. So usually I start with some big brushes, and I love these kind of big workhorse, large, what we call filbert rounds, bristle brushes. This one is a kind of, I've had this a while, but it's a big number, I don't know, 7 or 8 filbert. I have a variety of Robert Simmons, Rosemary, really good brushes that I take care of and clean them every day after you're painting with them. I also use a fan brush, and I have a variety of hog hair fan brushes and bristle fan and what we call like a chip brush. I even use like house painting brushes for larger paintings. Okay. So I remember we did some drawing and trying to find that gesture again. That big movement. Really just looking for big shapes. Now I'm going to use some of the darks of her robe to almost frame her. So I'm using some of the cools, sort of neutralized with some of the blues against the reds. And look at this thing very abstractly. Big brushes. So I'm using those darks to frame where her head is. This neck, the shoulders, and then the dark. So I'm really squinting, paying no attention, almost forcing my perception away from the kind of literal details. Just looking at really big shapes. When I'm first starting, at that point, I'm really just trying to look for dynamics, diagonals, shapes, just to get sort of the big flow of the composition, where I want to place the head in relationship to the space around it. You know, where are the diagonals? Once I'm feeling that and I'm comfortable with the dynamics of the design of the rectangle or square, then I start blocking in big lights, big shadows, mostly the shadows first, because the shadows are the precursor to all the lights. And so if I can establish a good dynamic composition and a good breakdown of lights and shadows, obviously drawing and your proportions are primarily important, I think the likeness and all of that stuff starts to build out from there. And if your drawing is off, if your proportions are off, it's more of a struggle. It's more of a struggle. What I love about a wood palette is you can just clean it so quickly. No scraping, just make room. So I'm going to start massing in what we call massing in some of the shadows. And I don't mean from the direct light source. I mean all of these shadows down this side of her face, the neck, this frontal part of her upper torso, not these direct lights from the spotlight. And so here's a perfect example of using some of these rich primary colors. Now I notice sometimes students, and they'll go for, you know, especially with a model like Ivana who's got sort of olive brown skin, they'll go for browns. And they'll use some of those neutrals, the siennas and the ochres, and I like to go right with the primary colors. And I'm going to mix what we call a transition. So I'm going to put the red up here and the green down here. This being my shadows, and these being my lights. And I'm going to create a transition. So this is, in a sense, a scale, but a scale having to do with temperature. And I'm going to neutralize that red with its opposite. And somewhere along the line, I'm going to find the right value and the right temperature or color for the shadow. And we're getting close, and there it is. It's a funny thing that when you observe something and it makes a recording with the synapse in your brain, your power of memory is unbelievably strong. And as you're mixing transitions on your palette, not trying to exactly mix one color or another, but building these transitions, how many variations from the warm to the cool, from the neutral, that you can find. We're just going to mass in big shapes. Shadow under the neck. It's much cooler here. So we're going to introduce some of these blues, some of these purples, mixing another transition. And you can see I'm reserving these areas here, this side of her face, for the lights. I'm doing what we call playing in the middle, massing in some of these middle shadows. Really thinking about it in a very abstract way. You can take a break. Take a break. Is your foot falling asleep?
Yeah.
All right. You got to get that blood flowing.
Yeah, it went numb.
Yeah, so let's get up and we'll take a break.
Okay.
If you want to shift that a little bit, you know, it's fine. Because I'm going to, you know, focus up here for a little bit. So if you want to, yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll be cool.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we can do, you know, short spurts.
Yeah. It's comfortable for a short while.
Yeah, okay, we'll do short spurts.
Yeah.
Okay, just that way a little bit. Right there. That's it. Great. Little less tilt. There we go. That's it. Thank you. So it's doing a head study like we sort of tried to do or are going to do. The intention really is to, the appropriate word there is study. Depending on how elaborate, you know, I take it, it really is a matter of time. If I have more time, then I'll try to develop it a little further in terms of its resolution, in terms of its detail, in terms of its finish quality. But essentially, a head study is for study, is to get your proportions, get your values, get your colors, and really get the character of the person. A portrait is kind of a little different, where you're really, in terms of me, you're really going after, you know, that essence, that person behind the eyes. That would be the difference between, say, a head study, which is a kind of an academic thing, to do a good head study, or to really do a portrait. Head studies are so important. To do them as exercise, to do them as preliminary works towards actually doing a formal or a good portrait of somebody. Head studies are, I can't even say how important they are. They're, I think, in my opinion, at the top of the sort of scale in terms of the kinds of exercise, the kinds of exploratory study that you need to do to get a really good portrait of somebody. So if ever you have the opportunity to work directly from the person, directly from life, head studies are a best way, not only just to do the painting, but also to build the acquaintance and the relationship with your sitter, with your model. You really get a chance to get past the kind of the surface quality that you can do with just a straightforward academic study, but that other thing that I was talking about, that what's behind the eyes, the soul, that bolt of lightning that you can capture in a moment of exploration, and those determining and building and finding those sort of undescribable elements that make for a really solid, compelling portrait or head study. I try to do several head studies a week, either as demonstrations for my classes or as preliminary studies for larger studio paintings I'm doing. But I'm always kind of carving away, like working paint as clay, trying to find and discover what is intrinsically unique about that person. And by doing a number of drawings and head studies, you can get there. Or I find that it helps me to get to a better end result if I do multiple head studies as well as multiple drawing studies prior to actually doing a finished portrait, so to speak. Okay, Ivana, let's take a break. Get up, walk around.
Yeah, I see it happening.
Yeah. So I'm gonna stay in here for a little bit.
Oh,
'Cause
okay.
I like the placement of it, and I like the way it's gonna flow back and down in here. So I mean, if you wanna,
Okay, so I could chill.
yeah, you can. You don't have to twist that. I mean, I love that twist, and we're gonna get to it. But right now, I'm not there yet.
Okay, cool.
So if you want to turn your foot the other way, just so that you're not feeling the pain,
Perfect.
okay?
Yeah.
But I need you right here because, this is the thing with, especially a portrait, of a beautiful, elegant. You need to. That's your hook. That's the hook right here.
Yeah.
So you need to get that right. Or scrape it, start again. Scrape it, start again. So let me work that trench warfare a little bit there. So don't worry about this part down here.
Okay. Cool.
I just need your.
Thanks for
I
telling
need your your that
Yes.
that breath, that attitude, and your. If you give me that, I can catch it.
Okay, I can do that.
I can try.
I can try too.
Yeah, good.
Okay, cool. Thanks for telling me.
Yeah, no, it's
Sometimes they don't
it's-
tell me, and then I look over and they just did like my armpit or something.
or you're like, wait, my whole leg and hip and all of that hurts, and he's not even painting that. Just chin down just a little bit. Oh, there it is. Oh, it's great. Just your chin down just a bit. Just that down. That's it. Good, right there. Most of the head studies that I do, I either wipe out or I stack in my flat file in my studio. I paint over them. Once in a while, obviously the more you do them, the better you increase your batting average in terms of capturing something that's, got that kind of, that you nail it, you really caught something there of that person, that expression, that human quality that they bring, that every individual brings to a sitting. Once in a while, you catch those, but most of the time, it's a good chance to get your drawing, to get your proportions, and to get your kind of academic understanding of that head study, their anatomy, their proportions, sort of under your belt, so then you can move on to the next portrait you're trying to do of them. And just back this way a little bit to me, right there. That's it. That's it. Well, hi, I'm Garin Baker, and welcome to my studio. This whole process, instead of it necessarily being a step-by-step how-to, is kind of going to be a fly on the wall, watching us kind of go through an exploration, a discovery, finding the right poses, stumbling a little bit, making lots of mistakes, and essentially through that process, creating something. And a hope that people get out of this, a way that they can start liberating their own creative process. So finding and embracing the fact that mistakes are so important, stumbling is so important, falling down is really the way that you're going to find what your language is and really what your own process eventually becomes. Welcome aboard and join in on it with us.
Well, that is Garin Baker, and it's called Intuitive Figure Painting. There's several demos in the full-length video, which you can learn about at streamline.art. And remember, we have a discount code for you up in the comments section. Make sure to take advantage of it today only. Now, let's get right to our interview with Garin.
My sort of travel, where I am as an artist, sort of as I tell my students, we're all out in the wilderness hacking away, you know, with our own machete, you know, trying to carve our own path. My path began in New York City on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Both my parents were creative people. My mom was a designer. My dad was a writer, director, filmmaker. And so in a sense, what they modeled for me as a real youngster was the struggle, you know, the struggle of working at your craft, the struggle at trying to live a creative life, making decisions that were based on your hopes and aspirations of your next creative endeavor rather than your fears and your trepidations about being safe. I went to really good schools, New York City. I went to the High School of Art and Design, went on to Pratt Institute. But in a sense, I lived a kind of a dichotomy between a creative kind of upbringing with great parents and great mentors and great teachers. But also, it was a kind of that time in New York City was a little bit of a rough and tumble time. And a lot of the friends that I grew up with, you know, there was a lot of street activity, there was a lot of neighborhood stuff. And so I kind of balanced between, you know, being a kid in the neighborhood and also trying to be an artist as I got sort of older. My personal story is really an outgrowth of that. That kind of balance between finding the really miraculous visions and interesting stories that can be told through my art, telling those interesting stories as a painter. And so it's all kind of been an outgrowth of my early upbringing in that kind of dual existence. Creativity, but pretty harsh reality, and as well trying to look at that kind of reality in a way that is uplifting and also has a real human content, a human narrative that transcends the particular kind of nuts and bolts of it. I guess it was more of an evolutionary kind of growth. As a youngster, I had some really hard influences early on with some of my peers, you know, seeing what life can be without, without a real passion. I saw, you know, as a youngster, some kind of really lots of negative influences in the streets and with many of my friends who grew up in, I would say, less advantaged backgrounds. And so being an artist and having that modeled for me by my parents seemed like, in a sense, the only option. I mean, I've had, as my younger years as an artist, I've had, regular jobs just like everybody else. Finding your way to earn a few bucks to survive and pay your bills. I just was really hell-bent on doing the kind of work and the kind of painting that I wanted to do. So whatever job I had was only an avenue to basically buy freedom, buy time and buy freedom. And so whether it be, I drove cars from airport to airport for rental car companies, and I would figure out how to do that and then pay for my time to work on my portfolio, to work on paintings that I was working on, to get time in front of life drawing classes and life painting classes. So I don't think there was necessarily an aha moment. It was just sort of a consistent evolutionary progression, in a sense. There have been a lot of aha moments throughout that, but not one that said, I'm going to be an artist, and that's what, it was sort of, I always kind of knew that that's what I wanted to do. Maybe be creative, basically be creative. Use my time, sort of form my life as a creative endeavor. I don't think that just painting is the part of creativity that I'm talking about. I think that my life, my interactions, how I built my place, my studio, my relationships with people, building long-term relationships with people that I work with, models and other arts educators, I think that that is my creative life as well. So I'm trying to create with my time here, which is very fleeting, not just in front of the easel, but with every decision and move I try and make. I try to do that as consciously and as forthrightly as possible, as much as I would actually create a painting or a drawing. Living mentors, because I have a lot of dead mentors, let's just say. My strongest influences really are, they go back to my father, as well as his father, and the travels that they took. I'm from sort of Russian immigrants that came here in the early 1900s. So my father was a second generation, not a first generation immigrant, he was second generation. And so a lot of my influences very early on, I found, before they were even celebrated in any way, shape, or form, I found some great books on Russian painting that I just I don't know what it was, but about 18 or 19, I just really fell in love with Russian painting. In addition to the other dead mentors that I have, the greats like Zorn and Sargent and some of the European 19th century masters. But for some reason, the ability for the Russian artist to take all of the knowledge and the schooling and the technique and all of the underpinnings of what makes great painting and bring a sort of a human soul, a depthful, ingrained kind of suffering to the work in a sense, that allowed them to really speak about a human narrative in their work. And so the great paintings of like Repin and Krumskoy and Levitan, Shishkin for landscape painting, those are in a sense, my dead mentors, as you could say. And I just think that their work really speaks to me. As well as a lot of other work, even abstract painting on many levels speaks to me. Live mentors who I'm blessed to know and still have around are people like Bert Silverman, Max Ginsberg. Actually, Max Ginsberg was my high school art teacher at the High School of Art and Design. And we're as close today as we were back then. We've never had, he's been like almost a second father to me. As well as people like Erwin Greenberg. So those are mentors that I've had that I've really tried to learn as much as possible and really model my thought processes and creative approach to picture making very much the way they have and through their years. Well, I'm hoping, throughout this process where you're kind of like watching me interact with Ivana over the next few days. She's fabulous. She's got a great soul and a great personality. She's really one of those really genuine, honest, straightforward, beautiful people. And so if you're watching us interacting, you're watching us communicate, not just verbally, but we're going to start communicating with drawing, we're going to start communicating with head study, we're going to start communicating with some outdoor portrait work. And so if you watch all of the steps and the stumbles and all of those things, what I'm really hoping for is that it encourages you to experiment. It encourages you to embrace this process of discovery. Because I'll say it again, that's where great painting starts. It's through a process of patience, of allowing things to happen, not setting things up, not having no formulas in mind, just moving the materials and the poses and the places and the light, waiting for it. And when you see it, you'll notice it. And when you notice it, you'll respond to it. And in that way, you're going to really feel quite liberated, away from technique, away from style, and away from a step-by-step process, but through a process of your own discovery and embracing your own ability to make mistakes. And that, I can't tell you how liberating that is as an artist. I actually, choose models, that have kind of an interesting character, interesting personality. Like this few days, we're going to be working with Ivana. She's a very interesting young woman, raised in Texas, military family. And there's a very interesting kind of dynamic that she comes to the table with. There's a softness, a spiritual quality. Obviously, she's stunningly beautiful. So there are lots of things that I'm going to be trying to sort of unpeel and discover as we're working together. Models that pose for me at the Art Students League, there's some really amazing characters, amazing people that come with great stories. So it's not necessarily your typical, good looking or beautiful or this or that. It's really the uncovering what's behind the eyes and what's beneath the surface sort of look of them.
Hello, my name is Ivana Spencer, and I'm a fine art muse, and I've been modeling for about, on and off since I was about 15 years old, so a little less than 15 years, maybe like 13, 14-ish years now. One of the things that I love most is being part of the art process. I just love being able to see something from beginning to end. And it's also pretty cool because I think one of the first cool things I noticed that I've never seen my face before, so it's also pretty interesting to see how people view you. Like, there'll be a room full of artists and they're all looking at the same thing, but when you look at all their work, it's all still different. It's kind of like handwriting, it's like everyone's different, even though you might be writing down the same thing as somebody else. When I was a teenager, it definitely taught me how to kind of fake confidence, like even at times when you would be unsure. And that faking kind of helped me develop like real confidence. And so, because also you're kind of like product, so you hear like what people think of you, and you, as if you're like not there and like what they're saying. So you kind of learn how to like, in one ear out the other, and just know that you're just like part of the art process. Like, it's nothing personal. Well, I think as far as like fine art, there'll always be a space for it because I'm not an artist, but it seems like when it comes to fine art, there's like a correctness to it. Like something, how do I put it? Like when it comes to fine art, it seems like something can be like incorrect versus like how there's art where it doesn't really matter, if that makes sense. Like you can just kind of create how you feel versus like fine art, there's structure to it, there's certain rules. It could be right, it could be wrong type thing. And I think there'll always be a place for it. I don't know, that's kind of how I live my life. Like I love structure. So I feel like it's one of those things that always be there. And I think especially with social media also, I think maybe it'll become more popular. Maybe people will know that like modeling is just not like runway or like print. There could be other forms too that kind of like flow well with your spirit, I guess.
Well, that is Garin Baker, and the new video is called Intuitive Figure Painting. I hope you enjoyed it. You can learn more about all the demos inside in the full-length video at streamline.art. Remember, we have a discount code for you up in the comments section. Take advantage of it today only, all right? Thank you for watching. I'm Eric Rhodes.
Oh, hi, I'm Garin Baker, and welcome to my studio. This whole process, instead of it necessarily being a step-by-step how-to, is kind of going to be a fly on the wall, watching us kind of go through an exploration, a discovery, finding the right poses, stumbling a little bit, making lots of mistakes, and essentially through that process, creating something. And a hope that people get out of this, a way that they can start liberating their own creative process. So finding and embracing the fact that mistakes are so important, stumbling is so important, falling down is really the way that you're going to find what your language is and really what your own process eventually becomes. Welcome aboard and join in on it with us.